Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. Join us each week or when you can. We enjoy exploring wellness concepts and reminding you to make time for wellness. This is episode 146. We hope our territorial acknowledgement improves allyship with Indigenous people within a reconciliation process. We're on the Haldeman Tract, located on the traditional territories of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples. We acknowledge the presence and traditional knowledge, laws, and philosophies of the Indigenous people with whom we share this land. This is Let's Be Well Together podcast. It's John Webster here, and I'm here with Sheila Webster.
Hi, John. I'm so happy to be here.
I know that you've been keeping some posts that you find once in a while, ones you find interesting, and you read one to me. I thought it was really cool. So why don't you tell people about it?
Okay, I read this on Facebook, and it starts like this. Laziness kills ambition. Anger kills wisdom. Fear kills dreams. Ego kills growth. Jealousy kills peace. Doubt kills confidence.
Yeah, and all those are cool. But then there was that little twist you told me about. So what is the twist?
It says, now read it from right to left. So I'm going to go back. Ambition kills laziness. Wisdom kills anger. Dreams kills fear. Growth kills ego. Peace kills jealousy. Confidence kills doubt.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. It works both ways.
It's really surprises me when I read it the other way around. I think it just resonates more with me because it's the positive that's killing the negative.
Yeah, because there seems to be negative on left, positive on right.
Yeah. Yeah, so I really like it better when the positive kills the negative instead of the other way around, you know? But they all really resonate with me.
And we could probably talk about each one of them on, like, we could take a whole what's on your mind for each one.
Yeah.
But we're not going to do that. But, like, what are a couple maybe you want to chat about?
Okay, let's do laziness kills ambition.
Okay.
I really like this because, as you know, I'm quite active and I like to do. I don't procrastinate. I just go and do it. And I do feel like ambition kills laziness. If you're ambitious, like, you can't be lazy because you just always got to go and you want to do it. You want to reach for the top. So that really helps. The
irony there is I don't think you do that because you're overly ambitious.
No, that's true.
I think it's just your personality. But I do think you're right. Like, for example, at one point you had your own business. Mm-hmm. And in a way, that's ambition, right? You're running your own business. Mm-hmm. And when you're running your own business, you don't have time for anything. You cannot be lazy because you can't even get what you need done, even if you're super busy working.
I know. Yeah, it's amazing. But I also feel like laziness and procrastination kind of work together. I feel like sometimes procrastinating can induce laziness, maybe, if that's what I'm thinking. But it kind of is the same theme that you're just procrastinating and not getting it done. That's something that I really don't like either.
And, you know, we're having all these like subcategories. So you're right. Mm-hmm. Like, procrastination is kind of a form of laziness. And one form of procrastination for me and a lot of people is when you have to do something new, when you have to do something you've never done before. Mm-hmm. And it's such a challenge. And I often find that we put those things on the back burner, and it does kill the ambition because you do want to get something done. Like, a lot of times that comes up in the context of work, mm-hmm. you know, where you're trying to be successful generally. Mm-hmm. That means dealing with new stuff too. Mm-hmm. But you get these things you don't know what to do about. You just stick it on the back burner and you don't get to it, and it kind of kills the success.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes I feel like brainstorming, though, like, it's when you've got something new to do and you're trying to figure out how to do it, sometimes you do need to take a step back, let your brain kind of evaluate and let it kind of muddle around in there. And then these ideas do pop up. But I do get what you're saying, that it's just too big a job. It's too much to take on. So you put it in the back burner and then it doesn't get done.
But I think for it to be successful brainstorming, you have to have something. Like, mm-hmm. you have to make the effort to say, I don't know how to do this. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to come up with game plan A. And you say, okay, game plan A would be doing X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And then you let it percolate. Mm-hmm. Yes. So I like that. But if you don't even come up with an initial plan, then you won't. And that's a real problem. Like, that's a real stressor for me, a work stressor.
Yeah.
When I'm leaving things and I don't get them, because the longer I leave them, the worse it feels. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's nice to break out of that laziness, figure something out, do something, mm-hmm. And then whether it's ambition or just kind of relieving the stress, you got to break that cycle.
Yeah, I agree. I know exactly what you're talking about. The other one I thought we could talk about was anger kills wisdom, or the other way around, wisdom kills anger. So for me, these two words don't seem to go together, anger and wisdom.
Oh, to me, it's a sign of our times. To me, this is like the theme of the modern age. And if I could just digress for a bit. So I was just at a conference, and it's a conference of law associations because I'm on a law association. So all of Ontario law associations get together and try and figure out things we can do together to help the industry and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And we were really lucky because the Chief Justice of Ontario, Justice Tulloch, did a presentation, and he was talking about civility. Mm. There kind of is a connection because I do kind of connect in civil behavior and anger. Mm-hmm. And he said so many great things, but I'm just going to talk about one of them. I think there's a difference between knowing stuff and being wise. Mm-hmm. Part of being wise is listening to people. Mm-hmm. A lot of times when you're angry, you don't listen. Mm-hmm. You know, you're mad and you want someone to believe what hear what you're saying. Mm-hmm. This is my perspective. Mm-hmm. And he made the point in the age right now where there's a real problem because we're not talking to each other anymore. We're talking at each other. Mm-hmm. And for the most part, people, when they start talking, they're not receptive to hearing what the other person has to say. They just have a perspective and they're trying to drive it home. And in this day and age, right, things are so polarized. It's like as soon as somebody says something and shows that they're on the other side, you're like angry. And anyway, so why am I saying all this? Because I don't think that's a very wise approach, right? So I think the wisdom comes when we talk to each other, listen to each other, receptive, be open to a new way of looking at things. And I also think too, with wisdom, you understand how people make mistakes. Yeah. You understand that people can't be perfect. And so maybe that helps you from getting angry when they make a mistake or say something they shouldn't. So I really do see wisdom as something that is a good
can kill
way
anger.
to fight anger.
Okay. Well, that's really interesting. I mean, it's really true what you're saying, that anger, when you're angry, you're definitely narrow-minded and, you're not thinking straight. You're just thinking very tunnel vision. Sometimes if you don't agree with a person, it doesn't mean that everything they're saying is wrong or everything that you're saying is right. Like either you can just kind of listen to each other, and that's where the wisdom comes from, I think. So yeah, I agree with you that wisdom can definitely kill the anger in yourself.
I think it's a natural reaction to be angry at certain things. So I don't think that just because you become angry, you should be down on yourself and judging yourself and be like, But what if you're angry and you're kind of practicing self-awareness and you're like, I'm really angry. Yeah. Like something is really bothering me. And you take a few minutes to think, what is it? And you figure it out. Well, maybe that is wisdom.
Yeah. Your wisdom is going to kill your anger. Yeah.
So, and maybe you're like, okay, I was right to be angry. And like, I remember when our kids were young and one of them played in goal, goalie in hockey. And, you kind of work through it. And we had this little routine to say, you know what? If you let it go and you're really upset, let yourself be angry for a few seconds and then regroup. Right. So yeah, you can be angry. That might be natural. But then when you apply a bit of wisdom, maybe it softens. Yeah, no, I get that. For some reason, I was thinking when I heard anger kills wisdom, it was more of an argument with two people. Right. Wisdom killing anger, like the argument side of it. But I really like the idea of it being yourself, self-aware, and your wisdom will kill your anger. Well, I love what you just said because it makes the point I was trying to make before in a different way, which is when I'm talking at you, I think I'm wise. Yes. And you're angry. Yeah. So I'm like, my wisdom should kill your anger. Yeah, exactly. But really what I should be thinking is, hey, we have two really different perspectives and we may never agree, but I should at least try and figure out where you're coming from. Yeah, where are you coming from? And that I can't just ram my view down your throat. No. Anyway, so we could probably talk about a lot more of them, but I just really like that post and I'm glad you told me about it. It was fun to talk about. Okay, so this is it for our 8-week focus on facets. And what we're doing is we're going through different areas of wellness. And each week we're highlighting one and how maybe it connects to others. And we've already talked about mental wellness, artistic wellness, environmental, spiritual, physical, intellectual, and economic. And today we're talking about social. And of course, none of these it's not listed in priority because they're all interconnected. We call this podcast Let's Be Well Together, partially because that's our best bet. When we work together, when we work to develop social wellness, when we support each other, that gives each of us our best chance to find wellness and balance. Our ability as a human species to work together is a strength of our species. I would argue that we're born to be social, just like we're born to be physical. And even though I'm an introvert, I realize how important it is to work on social wellness. There are lots of activities tied to social wellness, and remember our approach that we're exploring on this podcast. First, you figure out what your areas of wellness are. Second, you figure out what real activities that I can do day to day. What kind of activities like that can help foster wellness in any one of these categories? And so when you think about social, think about these kind of activities. Spending time with family, friends, and others. What about being part of a support network? Showing respect for others and being there for people when they need you. Developing intimacy. And there's more. We've had so many amazing interview guests who are talking in the area of social wellness. And just to name a few, Scott Williams has been on several times talking about concepts in the gender and 2S LGBTQ space. Elisa Brewer-Singh was here from the Waterloo Region Suicide Prevention Council, talking about topics that are in part social. Clarence Kakagi talked about the difference between territorial acknowledgements and land acknowledgements. Many don't know the difference between the two, and they say that they're going to give a land acknowledgement and then they give a territorial acknowledgement. As part of social wellness, it's nice to be able to get those kind of things right. In the end, to highlight social wellness this week, we selected the interview of Shereen Samuels about what is anti-racism and why learn about it. That was a real eye-opener for me, learning a difference between being non-racist and anti-racist. Hope you like it. Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Today's interview is in the category of social wellness. I'm happy that I work at a law firm that's proactive on social and wellness initiatives. I'm glad to connect with Gowling WLG's Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, DEI. Welcome, Shereen Samuels.
Hi, it's nice to be here with you, John.
Shereen has over 23 years of experience in DEI workplace initiatives. They include change work, curriculum development, and group process facilitation. In her profession and craft, she offers experience in leadership, policy development, strategic planning, communications, board governance, and risk management. She also has extensive experience in senior management and academic research. Shereen identifies as Black, queer, first-generation immigrant, cis woman of South Africa heritage. She is a creator of the Meaningful Inclusion Matrix, a framework to guide organizations in becoming more inclusive. So Shereen, thanks for doing a couple interviews with me. This first one focuses on anti-racism. What is it and why we should learn about it? I and other firm members took an eye-opening anti-racism course last year. I considered myself not racist. I was surprised to see that there were many concepts that I didn't appreciate. So can we maybe start by talking about what is anti-racism? How do you look at it?
Well, I love the way that you introduced that, John, because I think that what you just said really encapsulates exactly how lots of people feel about the topic of anti-racism, and that is that the goal is to be not racist. And it's fair. I think that's language that we were all brought up with. And I think that the difficulty with trying to be not racist versus being anti-racist is it puts an enormous amount of pressure in the wrong place, right? So when I think about not racist, I think about I as an individual having this enormous constant pressure to be behaving in some sort of perfect way, right? And if we think about that for a second, it kind of implies that racism comes from individuals. And I think that that also is a belief that we've probably largely grown up with, is that notion that racism is embedded in individuals and individuals have to combat it or wipe it out by sort of trying their hardest at every moment to be not racist. And that's kind of the root of when you hear people saying things like, I don't see color, and, I wish color just wasn't a thing. And, all of those sentiments, I think, come from that root, that source, that sort of desire to, or pressure to feel like you're constantly trying to be this perfectly not racist person. What anti-racism speaks to is that racism isn't rooted in individuals. It's rooted in structures. It's rooted in our societal definitions of right and wrong, our societal definitions of who is designed for power, who do we trust to hold power, and who do we trust less, right? So those ideas are built into everything. They're built into laws. They're built into rules. I'll give you an example. When we think back in Canadian history, it was see if I can remember my Canadian heritage moments. I think it was 1920 when women got the right to vote, right? So that's an example of structural discrimination, right? Where you say that because you are a woman, we trust you less than we trust men, right? We trust men to vote and govern the country. We trust women less. So that's an example of what I'm talking about and how these things are structurally defined. Another example is when we think about the Indian Act, and that under the Indian Act, until the 1950s, Indigenous people weren't allowed to engage with the legal system, right? They were essentially treated by the law as children. So they couldn't hire a lawyer. They certainly couldn't be a lawyer. And all of that, again, it speaks to who do we trust with power versus who do we trust less or not at all, right? So if we think then about this notion of who we trust with power as really embedded in all of our structures, and then all of us grow up inside those structures, right? We all grow up surrounded by these structures, taught that these structures are right. One of the first things you're taught as a child is you trust policemen and you trust judges and you trust that the system that exists around you, it exists to keep you safe and it is the best it can possibly be, right? So we're taught to trust the systems, even though the systems have these biases built into them. So if we think about the frame in that way, then racism is not the responsibility of individuals. It is built right into the systems, built right into the structures, and all of us have been taught it since birth.
The systemic nature of it, I really got me thinking when I took the anti-racism course. So here's my personal perspective. I used to like to think, I wouldn't really say it, there weren't many places to say it, but I used to think the color of a person's skin is like the color of their hair. Mm-hmm. Why would I treat somebody who's blonde differently than I would treat a brunette or a redhead?
Yeah.
And that gave me some comfort. And now I realize that I was kind of missing the point about it not being up to me, but I was also missing the point that what I wasn't looking at was maybe to me, the color of your skin won't matter, but maybe to you it will because of what you've gone through as part of society and how the system is built. And so 100%. That concept that I had about, well, I'll just say that it's like the color of the hair, I was kind of blinding myself to that systemic side of it.
That's exactly it, John. And I think that, so then when we talk about what anti-racism is, it's saying not just that, my participation in the system ends with saying I'm not racist, right? And I think this speaks to exactly what you were saying. If I simply say, well, the color of your skin doesn't matter to me any more than the color of your hair, then I'm saying my responsibility to engage and be aware is discharged, right? I'm done. There's nothing more for me to do here. When we take an anti-racist approach, we say, regardless of what I as an individual believe, I understand that the structures are built to trust some people more and other people less, and to give some people more power and other people less. And if I know that to be true, then it's not just my job to not see color. My job is to look at the ways the structures are unfair or unequal and do what I can as a person to change that, so that people do have equal access, right? And can be heard. So I think that that's the difference between not racist, which says my duty stops at, I can't see it, therefore it doesn't exist. Anti-racism says it may not be part of my experience, but I understand that it is built into structures. And so my responsibility, if you like, should I choose to accept it, is because I live within these systems as well, as a Canadian. I vote for people based on what they say about how they think the structures should stay the same or change. I support with my dollars as a consumer companies that are also supporting public figures. There's any number of ways that we as people, as individuals, exert power over the systems and structures, and just acknowledging that is part of the responsibility, is seeing that there's inequality in there.
What's interesting there, though, it's beyond just, my personal involvement. Part of my personal involvement is taking a stake in social wellness. Part of my, so I do have to personally take steps, but I can't end it at just fixing myself. I have to try and fix the social structures. Now, I have a particular kind of blinder on for the concept of social construct. It's something I'm trying to better understand. And so anytime I have a guest who's mentioned the word social construct, I try and fill in that picture a bit more. So you're not expected to know everything about it. But when you hear concepts like race is a social construct and racism is a social construct, can you help me try and understand how you see that?
Absolutely. Okay. So, first of all, the basic notion of a social construct is that it exists because we as a community will it into existence. Money is a great example, right? The pieces of paper that we use, or the cryptocurrency, or our debit cards count as tender. They count as worth something because we all agree that they do. And that's the only reason that they work. If a bunch of us decided tomorrow just to stop believing it, we would start to create problems. And we see this with crypto, right? Some people believe crypto is real and some people don't believe crypto is real. Right. So, how valuable it is very sort of vulnerable to that, right? Money works because we all decided hundreds of years ago, pieces of paper count. And so that's an example of a social construct. So the concept of race, we don't even have clear agreement on what race is. Okay. So when we go back 400 years to Shakespeare's time, he considered being French a race, right? He considered being Jewish a race. What race even means is very, very friable in people's heads, right? It can be cultural heritage.
So can I interject for a sec? So what I'm hearing you saying then is, so when we're talking about social construct, at a certain period in history, we might construct the description of race one way. And at a different period, so back in Shakespeare's day, it might have had to do more with nationality. Yeah. And then at another time, it might have more to do with the color of your skin. And maybe another time it has something to do with ethnicity. But I think I understand what you're saying, that we see it as a social construct because we're constructing it differently in different time periods. We're constructing it differently over time. Let me give you another one that might blow your mind. If we think about what it means to be white, and we tend, as a society, we tend to shy away from talking about whiteness. But if we think about what it means to be white today versus what it meant to be white 150 years ago, if you were to ask an Irish person if they are white today, they would likely say yes. And right? I think most people would say that they are. I think most people would likely say, you point to an Irish person, is that person white? Chances are excellent that we're going to think that that's a white person. But we know that if we go back 100 or 150 years, it wasn't uncommon for people to have signs in shop windows that said things like, no Irish, no Black people, using pejorative terms, no Irish, no Black people, no Polish people, right? Like
Polish people were lumped in there, Irish people were lumped in there along with Black people. So it's not just about the color of your skin. Clearly, the concept of race. And so if whiteness can, in 100 years, change that much, it's not based in something fundamental. It's not based in something essential. It's based in something that changes as society changes.
As we
That's
change
the fundamental basis of a social construct, right?
So we change what we agree on as being X or Y.
Mm-hmm. And who gets to say?
Right.
Who gets to say you are now white?
Well, the thing is, it's almost like it changes so slowly over time. I don't remember. That's new to me when you're saying Irish people, Polish people were treated as a race. I believe it because I know that there was discrimination. But
absolutely,
I'm guessing things changed slowly over time. And, for a long time, it kind of weaned out and then they started getting grouped in with white people. All right. Now, I'm going to turn to the last question soon. But just before we do that, the one last thing I just want to ask, because we've only been able to just scratch the surface, but I still think it's better to have some info than none.
Yeah.
But what are the workplace advantages to anti-racism training? And does it change behavior at work?
Well, it can. I mean, I think one of the complexities of this work is that we talked about how it can't be rooted only in individual perspective. It has to be understood as a structural issue. But the fact is that if we don't, as individuals, understand the problem and have some kind of commitment to doing something about the problem will never go away, right? So even though the problem is structural and we don't, own it or bear guilt for the structure being what it is, at some point you have to get people to look at the fact that the inequality, the inequity will never shift as long as we stop at, I am not racist, I don't see color, therefore I'm out, right? As long as people are stopping at that point, we never get to the point where we look at the structures and consider what change can happen. And particularly in workplaces are a place where you can actually get traction and make change relatively, and I mean that word relatively, quickly, right? Like much faster in a workplace than you can, say, at a whole society level, right? Because a workplace is a small contained system. But in order to do that, there has to be some critical mass of commitment by the people in the workplace that it matters to do it, because it's not easy. And so that, to me, is why things like anti-racism training matter, because they do what it did for, you and other firm members who attended the sessions that we held. It helps open your eyes to the fact that not racist isn't far enough.
No, that's true. And I remember I was in that session and you had to go through, and I've already talked a little bit about this on the podcast, so some listeners will remember it, but there were a bunch of expressions. And the question was, why are these expressions problematic or whatnot? And there were some, I'm like, I don't know what the problem is. And one of them was, we all have a chance to succeed and go as far as we want type thing. Yeah. And, it really opened my eyes. And then I started appreciating the difference between not racist, anti-racist, and the systemic side. And then I saw this social media post. And if you can imagine this, imagine a level that you're trying to get to. And on the left-hand side, it's only 10 stairs to get to that level. Mm-hmm. And on the right-hand side, it's 100 stairs to get that level. And exactly. the person at the top is standing on the third step, and he's looking down at the person who's on the bottom of the 100 step saying, what's his problem? Right. And I finally get that. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it was great for me. It planted a seed that I'm not sure what eventually will grow, but I think you're right. At least now I'm starting to understand some of the basic concepts from which I can move forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And can I just say this? Mm-hmm. I think that, I'm a big believer in using as the foundation for how we think about this, the concept of community. Like we want our communities to be healthy. We want our communities to be connected, and we want people to thrive in our communities, right? I find that, politics at the municipal level, for example, tends to be some of the purest politics,
right?
Because that's when you're talking about the well-being of your next door neighbor, right? And that's when it's hardest to say, I don't care about that guy. Right? That's when it's hardest because it's someone you know. And so at the point where we can say, I'm going to behave as though this is my community, And I want everyone to be able to thrive in it. That's the point where I think we feel the impetus to try and move towards anti-racism rather than just being not racist.
No, you're right. And when I think about it, the local politics, whether it's at city level or region level, I think it's also less polarized, right? It's not as party structured, and there's a lot more cooperation and working together and finding a way forward.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, we're at the end, and I ask every guest the same question. It's in the context of our show being about wellness and my own theory that there's many areas of wellness in our life, but at any given time, it's really hard to keep them all going. So we do this mini wellness check-in. Are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of even one thing you can do to foster wellness in that area?
This is interesting. And it's not, I think my answer is, it's not necessarily connected to what we've been talking about today, but for a long time, I think I struggled with movement, and I'm talking about movement as distinct from exercise. And I've read a number of books lately. We've got one on the coffee table right now called The Joy of Movement that talks about the fundamental role that movement plays, not just in physical wellness, but emotional wellness, social wellness, mental, all of it, right? That we are, as physical beings, our brains were built on the principle of movement. And so I've really been taking that to heart, because I think I grew up with this kind of notion that I got from somewhere that if I wasn't sort of sweating hard, and if I wasn't really, like pushing myself and exerting myself in really painful ways, that it didn't count. And so I think the thing I've been trying to do recently is be much more compassionate with myself and just try to move and find joy in movement. That
sounds amazing. Now, I am married to a dancer. And so she's constantly, nice. She's taught dance, she's done dance, and something will come on, or she's just in a good mood. She always incorporates these little movements, and she has a job where she does lots of movement. And I think it does her a lot of good. And so I hope you have some fun doing that.
Yes, that's the goal. Yeah.
Another message we try and send out on the show too. One of our main messages, Shereen, is that we like people to think about incorporating physical exercise and movement as part of their everyday life. We even have a little segment called Move That Body, just to say, hey, move that body. And one of the messages we send is it doesn't have to be high intensity. It doesn't have to be punishing your body. And some of the best things you can do are go for walks or do anything that involves a lot of movement. So I wish you all the best in that. And I hope you start feeling better when you start getting time to do more movement.
Thanks so much, John. It's been a pleasure.
We love our listeners, and thanks for joining us. Please help spread the word about Let's Be Well Together podcast. Follow us and rate us on Spotify, Apple, Google, or your favorite podcast platform. Follow us on Instagram at lets.be.well.together and let your friends know about us.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
One of our regular guests is Andrea Lee, and I follow her on Instagram at Andrea Lee Fitness. And I saw a pretty scary post for her. And
Very
at
scary.
first I'm like, I'm going to have fun reading this because I'm not average.
Exactly. Me neither.
I don't think I am average, but this list, which I guess suggests we should be able to do some of this stuff, is both good and bad, because some of it I do, some of it I can't do.
Yeah, I know, me too.
So let me read the list. And the point is, it says, the average adult gains 10 to 15 pounds every 5 years, can't do a single pull-up, stares at screens for 5+ hours a day, eats more sugar than protein, tosses and turns all night, cannot squat their own body weight, cannot deadlift their own body weight, walks less than 5,000 steps per day, hits snooze 3 times before getting up, piles on meds for lifestyle diseases, gets winded walking upstairs, and watches their body decay year after year. This isn't getting old, this is neglect. Scary stuff.
That is so scary.
Like, first of all, I'm surprised that this is what the average adult does in a way, but I'm not surprised.
Right. Well, I want to go to the gym right now, because I'm wondering, I do pull-up exercises, but I use a pull-up assist.
I know, I cannot do a pull-up.
The average person cannot do a pull-up.
That's one that I'd have to work on. I mean, for me, the problem's mostly body weight, but also I don't do enough weightlifting with my arms. So I got to get stronger.
I think it's your back too for the
Sure.
pull-up.
Yeah,
you
you're
know,
right.
like, and I'm just wondering if I can actually do one pull-up. Like I might be able to pull that off doing one pull-up.
Especially if you could try different ways.
Yeah.
Like there's some pull-ups that are harder than others.
Yeah.
I think I might be able to do one depending, but yeah, you're right. I need to use that assist machine.
Yeah. Gaining 10 to 15 pounds every 5 years is like, oh my gosh, really? But that's not that much.
It's so easy. I mean,
it is so easy.
how easy is it to gain a pound in a week?
Well,
It's easy.
really, a pound in a week?
Yeah, you just go out a couple nights and have too much food. You can easily put on a pound in a week.
Like,
And then,
wow.
but like the thing is, normally then you lose it the next week. But
Right.
all you need to do is just gain a teeny bit more every time. And
Exactly.
part of it could be maybe drinking more beer or whatever. Part of it might be more desserts, but part of it might just be getting older, you know, like there's times as you get older where your things slow down a bit.
And also being less active,
True.
right? That's going to be part of it. So,
So you definitely want to keep your eye on the weight.
yeah.
A lot of people don't like to weigh themselves. I have to, just because if I don't, things get spin out of control pretty fast. One that I see here that's, you know, I'm not sure people think about would be a really good one to think about. A lot of people eat more sugar than protein, and I think they're talking grams.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
You'd be surprised how many grams of sugar are in things. And I also kind of think that not enough people realize how much protein they should be eating in a day. So that's something they should look into.
Right. Both of those things I have realized in the most recent years of my life to actually look at sugar content and things. And I also feel like the more processed it is, the more sugar is in it.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't want to get into each of one of these things,
Yeah.
but the general message, it was a real eye opener for me and makes me kind of revisit. Yeah. I don't mind getting old, but I don't want to fall apart because of neglect.
Yeah.
And there's some things I'm doing well, getting lots of steps in. There's some things I'm not doing so well, strength training.
Yeah.
And thanks, Andrea, because you're reminding me to kind of motivating me to get back into some stuff.
That's what I think too, that, yeah, sure. It kind of gives you a little bit of something to work towards. You're like, oh, I'm really doing well in my fitness goals. And then you read this going, oh,
I'm doing pretty good, but I can do better. And it's always good to get some incentive. Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
and it's sign off time. It's Sheila here with John.
Hello, everyone.
We had a busy week this week, going from having the baby to going back to regular working schedule. And then we ended up going up to visit with them. So we had lots going on. I also worked a private function this week. So that was interesting. Lots of fun things going on, and the weather's starting to turn. So I think this is probably my last week of biking to work.
Yeah, every day you're like, okay, tomorrow can I bike? And so far it's always been like, hey, it's not too bad tomorrow.
Yeah, but today the wind, and then it started to rain, and I was like, oh no. So it's just getting a little bit unpredictable.
Time to drive again.
Really makes me
I'm going to
sad.
keep walking though, because, you know, if you're walking, it's not so bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Walking is not so bad. It's just biking, especially with the wind and the rain, you know, you're like pushing against. And the other problem I have with biking when it starts getting cold is I feel like it's dangerous to be on the road and it's not being respectful to the drivers. You know, I feel like they're worried about what will happen with me. So I like to kind of put the bike away for the winter. What about you, John? What's new with you?
I'm really enjoying seeing the new grandson.
Yeah.
And we're not really saying much about it because we want Elise to be able to tell you guys about things, the name and how things are and all that stuff. So we're just going to stay mum for now. Mm-hmm. But I really did enjoy spending some time with him on the weekend. Mm-hmm. That was pretty cool. And I know I talked a little bit on our What's on Your Mind about that I'd been at a conference last week. That had me busy because I was busy trying to get all my work done so I could go to the conference. And I'm at the conference. The emails are coming in, bing, bing, bing. I'm trying to stay on top of things. But we had a speech by the Chief Justice of Ontario. There's different levels of court. So we have Superior Court and there's the Chief Justice of that. We have Ontario Court. There's a Chief Justice of that. This is the Chief Justice who oversees all the courts. His name is Justice Tulloch. And he just gave a really incredible speech on why it's so important to have civility in court proceedings. And I could go on at length, I won't. But the thing I really liked about what he said was kind of an easy way to look at things. There's too much talking at people these days and not talking to people. Mm-hmm. And what he meant was a lot of times in conversations, especially if there's polarized groups, the one person, they're not really interested in talking to the other person. They just want to tell them the right answer, their perspective. I really like that idea of trying to turn things around and start talking to each other again, which means we have to be receptive. We have to listen. We have to give the other idea a chance. Doesn't mean you have to agree ultimately, but at least if we can have courteous discussions and a bit of an open mind, it'll be a lot better than just two people talking at each other when that's not going to go anywhere. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, sounds great. And I actually survived without you. So usually I'm the one that leaves.
True.
I'm the one that's gone and John's left alone, which he actually really enjoys. But this time he left for a few days and I was like, oh my gosh, who's going to make my coffee and who's going to do all these things? So it was really nice because I actually made my own coffee and did everything. And I came home and the house was exactly the way I left it.
Is that good?
Yeah, it is really nice to that. But you know, you are kind of lonely. It's lonely being alone.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is I'm very important. And I should be home so that Sheila can enjoy her life and she doesn't want him gone. And hopefully that's what you guys think about the podcast too.
And we do want to say that Elise was going to be on with us, but the baby called her, so she couldn't come. So that's too bad. Hopefully she'll be back on a sign-off soon.
Yeah, but luckily for her, she's spending time with the baby.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.